The crack of a gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Salina, Kansas, as Olivia Chapman clutched her youngest child to her chest and ran. Her heart pounded against her ribs like a caged bird, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she urged her two older children forward through the gathering darkness. Behind them, the silhouette of her husband Frank staggered drunkenly on the porch of what had once been their home, his curses fading as they disappeared into the night of June 1875. "Mama, I'm scared," whispered 7-year-old Emma, her small hand gripping Olivia's skirt as they hurried toward the stagecoach station. "Just a little further, sweetheart," Olivia managed, shifting 3-year-old Thomas in her arms while keeping a watchful eye on 10-year-old James, who walked solemnly ahead. The weight of their hastily packed belongings dragged at her shoulder, but it was nothing compared to the burden of fear she'd carried these past years. The stagecoach station was mercifully empty save for the ticket agent, an elderly man with kind eyes who glanced at her bruised cheek, but asked no questions when she purchased 3 tickets to Clearwater, a small cattle town nearly 100 miles west. "Last stage tonight leaves in 20 minutes, madam," he said quietly, sliding the tickets across the counter. "You and your little ones can wait inside where it's warm." Olivia nodded gratefully, gathering her children close on the wooden bench. James, always so serious for his age, sat protectively next to his siblings. His resemblance to Frank made her heart ache, the same dark hair and strong jaw, but his eyes were gentle like her father's had been. "Are we ever going back?" James asked, his voice barely audible. Olivia stroked his hair, the bruises on her wrist visible in the lantern light. "No, my brave boy. We're going to start fresh." The journey to Clearwater passed in a blur of anxiety and exhaustion. Olivia barely slept, starting at every sound, convinced Frank would somehow find them. By the time they arrived, dusty and weary, the children were cranky and her meager savings were dwindling rapidly. Clearwater was smaller than Salina, just a handful of buildings clustered around a main street with the vast Kansas prairie stretching beyond. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Olivia stood in the street, children and luggage surrounding her, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. "You look like you could use some help, madam." The deep voice startled her, and Olivia spun around, instinctively pulling Emma behind her skirts. A tall man stood before her, his face partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. Unlike Frank, who always seemed coiled like a snake ready to strike, this stranger stood with an easy grace, hands relaxed at his sides. "I'm fine, thank you," she replied stiffly, though everything about her, from her disheveled appearance to the frightened children, suggested otherwise. "Name's Isaac Kendrick," he said, keeping a respectful distance. "I own the Circle K ranch outside town. If you're looking for work and a place to stay, I might be able to help." Olivia studied him cautiously. He was older than her 28 years, perhaps in his mid-30s, with weathered skin that spoke of long days under the sun. His blue eyes held a solitary sadness that somehow made her trust him more than a smile might have. "I'm Olivia Chapman. These are my children, James, Emma, and Thomas." She hesitated, pride warring with practicality. "We are looking for work, as it happens." Isaac nodded, his gaze taking in the children with a gentleness that made something in Olivia's chest loosen slightly. "My housekeeper left last month to get married. Place is getting to be a mess, and I'm not much for cooking beyond beans and bacon." A small smile touched his lips. "The position comes with room and board in a separate cabin near the main house. It's modest, but clean." Olivia knew she should be more cautious. A woman alone with 3 children couldn't afford to trust too easily. But the alternative was spending their last dollars on a room at the boarding house while she searched for work that might not exist. "When would you need me to start?" she asked. "Whenever you're ready. I can take you out to the ranch now if you'd like." He gestured to a wagon parked outside the general store. "I'm in town for supplies." James tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, I'm hungry," he whispered. Isaac overheard. "Mrs. Peterson at the cafe makes a fine stew. Why don't I treat you all to a meal while you consider my offer? No obligation." The children looked up hopefully, and Olivia's resolve weakened. "That's very kind, Mr. Kendrick." "Isaac, please." Over bowls of hot stew and fresh bread, Olivia watched Isaac interact with her children. He answered James's eager questions about ranch life patiently, made Emma smile with a simple coin trick, and didn't seem bothered when Thomas spilled his milk. There was no hint of the tightly leashed anger she'd grown so accustomed to with Frank. By the time the meal was finished, Olivia had made her decision. "We'd be grateful for the position, Mr. Kendrick Isaac. When can we see the cabin?" The relief in his eyes suggested he'd been more invested in her answer than he'd let on. "Right now, if you're up for the ride." "It's about 5 miles out." The journey to the Circle K took them through rolling grasslands dotted with wildflowers. Despite her exhaustion, Olivia found herself mesmerized by the vastness of the sky, so different from the close confines of their life in Salina. Beside her on the wagon seat, Isaac pointed out landmarks and spoke quietly about the ranch. "It's not the biggest spread in the county, but it's good land. Got about 60 head of cattle, some horses, chickens. Grow enough to feed ourselves and sell a bit at market." "Do you run it alone?" Olivia asked. A shadow crossed his face. "Got 2 ranch hands who help with the cattle. Used to be a family operation. My brother William and I inherited it from our pa. Will died 2 years back. Fever took him." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly, recognizing the grief in his voice. "Been just me since then." He glanced back at the children, who had fallen asleep in the wagon bed. "Be nice to hear young voices around the place again." As they crested a gentle rise, the ranch came into view. A sturdy 2-story house with a wide porch, a large barn, and several outbuildings arranged in a rough semicircle. Off to one side stood a smaller cabin, smoke curling from its chimney. "That's where you'd be staying," Isaac said, pointing to the cabin. "Had Miguel one of my hands light a fire to warm it up." The cabin was indeed modest, just 2 rooms with a small lean-to kitchen, but it was clean and solid, with real glass windows and a plank floor. A large bed occupied one corner of the main room, with a smaller trundle bed beneath it. A table with 4 chairs stood near the stone hearth, and a rocking chair was positioned by the window. "The other room can be for the boys," Isaac explained, showing her a space with a sturdy bed and a chest of drawers. "Emma can sleep with you, or we can arrange something else if you prefer." Olivia ran her hand over the smooth wood of the table. After years of living in fear, the simple cabin felt like a fortress of safety. "It's perfect," she whispered, blinking back unexpected tears. Isaac cleared his throat, suddenly awkward. "Well, I'll leave you folks to get settled. There's stew in the pot on the hearth and bread in the box. Breakfast is usually at sunrise, but take tomorrow to rest if you need. We can talk about your duties then." After he left, Olivia sat in the rocking chair while her children explored their new home. For the first time in years, she allowed herself a fragile hope. They were far from Salina, from Frank's fists and drunken rages. Perhaps here they could heal. Yet as she watched the sun setting over the endless prairie, Olivia couldn't shake the fear that their peace was merely temporary. Frank had always said no one would want her and the children, that she belonged to him. She prayed he was wrong, even as she tucked her children into their beds and barred the cabin door. Isaac Kendrick stood on the porch of his empty house, watching the light in the cabin window. The woman's fear was palpable, visible in the way she flinched at sudden movements and positioned herself between her children and any perceived threat. He recognized the signs his mother had worn the same expressions in the years before his father drank himself to death. He hadn't planned on offering Olivia Chapman a job, had only approached her because she'd looked so lost standing in the street. But something about her quiet dignity and the protective way she gathered her children close had stirred feelings he thought long buried after 2 years of solitude. "You're a fool, Isaac," he murmured to himself as he entered his house. The rooms echoed with emptiness, too large for one man but filled with memories he couldn't bring himself to leave. His brother's favorite chair still sat by the fire. Their mother's quilt still covered the beds upstairs. As he readied for sleep, Isaac promised himself he would keep a respectful distance. Olivia Chapman clearly needed safety more than anything, and he would provide that without complication. The ranch had been lonely since Will's death, but he'd grown accustomed to the solitude. Having a family in the cabin would bring some life back to the place. Nothing more. Yet as he drifted off to sleep, the image of Olivia's face when she'd seen the cabin stayed with him, the flicker of hope beneath her wariness, like the first green shoot after a long winter. Morning came with the familiar sounds of ranch life: roosters crowing, cattle lowing in the distant pasture, the low voices of Miguel and Hank as they prepared for the day's work. Isaac completed his chores earlier than usual, finding himself glancing repeatedly toward the cabin where no smoke yet rose from the chimney. By mid-morning, he'd run out of reasons to stay near the house and was about to ride out to check the north pasture when the cabin door opened. James emerged first, looking around curiously before spotting Isaac by the corral. "Good morning, sir," the boy called, approaching with cautious interest. "Are those your horses?" "Morning, James." "Yes, they are. That paint mare is Willow and the black gelding is Thunder." "They're beautiful," James said, his eyes wide as he leaned against the fence. "I've never been this close to horses before." "Never?" Isaac raised an eyebrow. "Well, that won't do. How about I teach you to ride sometime? With your mother's permission, of course." The boy's face lit up. "Really?" "That would be—" He stopped abruptly as Olivia appeared in the cabin doorway, Emma and Thomas at her side. "James," she called, her voice tight with worry. "Don't wander off, please." "He's fine, Mrs. Chapman," Isaac assured her, tipping his hat. "Just admiring the horses." Olivia approached, her hair neatly pinned back though shadows lingered beneath her eyes. She wore a simple blue dress, faded but clean, and carried Thomas on her hip. The bruise on her cheek had faded to a yellowish shadow. "I apologize for our late start," she said formally. "The children were exhausted from traveling. No need to apologize. I said to take your time." Isaac smiled at Emma, who was half hidden behind her mother's skirts. "Did you all rest well?" "Yes, thank you." Olivia set Thomas down but kept hold of his hand. "I'm ready to discuss my duties whenever is convenient for you. I was about to have some coffee. Would you like to join me on the porch?" When uncertainty crossed her face, he added, "The children are welcome to explore the yard, long as they stay where we can see them." Over coffee on the main house's porch, Isaac outlined what he needed: meals prepared, house cleaned, laundry done, garden tended. "Nothing too strenuous, I hope. I know you've got your hands full with 3 little ones." "I'm used to hard work," Olivia said, her chin lifting slightly. "And James is very helpful with his siblings." "I don't doubt it." Isaac watched James showing Emma a grasshopper he'd caught in the yard. "He seems like a fine boy." Something like pride softened Olivia's expression. "He is, they all are, despite—" She trailed off, sipping her coffee. "Despite their father," Isaac ventured quietly, her gaze snapped to his, wary and defensive. I don't discuss my personal affairs, Mr. Kendrick. Of course. Forgive me. He set his cup down. I only meant to say that I understand something of what you might be running from. My own father was. He searched for a diplomatic word. Difficult, especially when he drank. Olivia studied him for a long moment, then looked away. Frank wasn't always like that, she said finally, her voice barely audible. When we married, he was kind, charming even. It changed slowly, then all at once after Thomas was born. You don't need to explain, I want you to understand why we're here, she interrupted, her knuckles white around her cup. The last time he threatened the children, not just me. I couldn't, her voice broke. I couldn't let them grow up thinking that's what marriage is, what love is. Isaac felt a surge of anger toward this unknown Frank, coupled with admiration for the woman before him. You did the right thing bringing them here. You'll be safe at Circle K, I promise you that. Olivia nodded, composing herself. Thank you. Now, about those duties, the weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that grew increasingly comfortable. Each morning, Olivia rose early to prepare breakfast for Isaac and his ranch hands before feeding her own children. She spent her days cleaning the main house, tending the vegetable garden that had gone slightly wild in the housekeeper's absence, and caring for her children. Isaac was often out on the range, but he made a point of being present at mealtimes. Olivia noticed how he always thanked her for the food, complimented her cooking, and asked the children about their day. Emma, initially shy around the tall cowboy, gradually warmed to him, especially after he brought her a kitten from a litter born in the barn. Her mama's a good mouser, he explained as Emma cradled the tiny calico. This little lady can stay in your cabin if you'd like a pet. Can we keep her, Mama? Emma pleaded, eyes shining. Olivia couldn't refuse, it had been so long since she'd seen her daughter this animated. Yes, but you'll have to care for her properly. I will, I promise. Emma looked up at Isaac with adoration. Thank you, Mr. Isaac. Just Isaac is fine, Miss Emma, he replied with a wink that made the girl giggle. It was moments like these that confused Olivia, most the easy kindness Isaac showed her children, so different from Frank's growing resentment of them. Isaac seemed to genuinely enjoy their company, teaching James about ranch work, telling Emma stories, and letting Thomas follow him around the yard helping with chores. Yet he maintained a careful distance from Olivia herself. He was unfailingly polite, even warm in conversation, but never stepped beyond the boundaries of employer and employee. Olivia told herself, this was for the best. The last thing she needed was another man in her life, yet found herself watching him when he didn't notice, wondering about the sadness that sometimes clouded his eyes. One evening in late July, as Olivia hung laundry in the yard, she spotted Isaac returning from the north pasture, his shirt dark with sweat, hat pushed back on his head. He dismounted with the easy grace that still caught her attention, then noticed her watching and raised a hand in greeting. Beautiful evening, he called, leading Thunder toward the barn. It is, she agreed, pinning one of James's shirts to the line. Dinner will be ready in an hour. I'll be there, he promised, disappearing into the barn. Olivia returned to her task, only to pause when she heard raised voices from the direction of the bunkhouse where Miguel and Hank stayed. The words were indistinct, but the tone was unmistakable anger, accusation. She tensed instinctively, the wooden clothespin gripped tightly in her hand. Minutes later, Isaac emerged from the barn and strode toward the bunkhouse, his posture rigid. Olivia hurried to finish the laundry, retreating to her cabin where the children were playing. The familiar fear churned in her stomach. Men's anger had only one outcome in her experience. That evening, Isaac was late to dinner. When he finally arrived, his expression was troubled, though he attempted a smile for the children. "Sorry to keep you waiting," he said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Had some business to attend to." Olivia served the stew silently, her hands steady through years of practice at hiding her anxiety. The meal passed with Isaac making his usual conversation with the children, but she noticed a tension in his shoulders, a distraction in his gaze. After the children were excused, Olivia began clearing the dishes. Isaac remained seated, turning his coffee cup slowly between his hands. "Mrs. Chapman, Olivia," he said finally. "I should explain about earlier," she stilled, plates in hand. "There's no need, there is," he insisted gently. "I saw your face when you heard the argument. You were afraid." Olivia couldn't deny it. "Old habits," she said simply. Isaac nodded. "Hank and Miguel were fighting over a card game. Nothing serious, but I don't tolerate that kind of behavior here. I sent Hank into town to cool off." He looked up at her, his blue eyes earnest. "I want you to know that your children are safe here. You're safe here." "I know," Olivia said, though the words came more easily than the belief behind them. "Do you?" Isaac stood, keeping the table between them. "Because sometimes I see you flinch when I move too quickly, or watch me like you're waiting for something to change." Olivia set the dishes down carefully. "Mr. Kendrick, Isaac, please." "Isaac." She met his gaze steadily. "My husband was charming too at first. He made promises. He was kind to me, gentle with the children, until he wasn't." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You think I'm the same?" "I think all men have the capacity for violence when pressed." The words were bitter, learned through pain. "Maybe so," Isaac acknowledged, surprising her. "I won't pretend I've never been in a fight or lost my temper. But I've never raised my hand to a woman or child, and I never will." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "My father was like your husband. I saw what he did to my mother, to Will and me. I swore I'd die before I became him." The quiet conviction in his voice reached something in Olivia that had been frozen for years. She found herself wanting to believe him, despite every hard lesson she'd learned. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. Isaac nodded, respecting the careful distance between them. "I'll help you with these dishes." "That's not necessary, I insist." A small smile touched his lips. "My mother would roll in her grave if she knew I was letting a lady clear my table alone." Working beside him in the kitchen, Olivia felt a strange comfort in the domestic routine they established. He washed, while she dried and put away, their conversation turning to lighter topics. The weather, the upcoming harvest, a funny story about Thomas chasing chickens. By the time they finished, the earlier tension had dissipated, replaced by something warmer, more companionable. As August ripened towards September, subtle changes marked the passing days at Circle K. James began accompanying Isaac and the hands on their shorter rides, returning sun-browned and full of stories. Emma adopted not just one kitten but two, naming them Honey and Sugar, and spent hours in the garden helping Olivia tend the vegetables. Thomas, now comfortable in their new home, explored every corner of the yard, his little voice a constant soundtrack to their days. And Olivia found herself smiling more, laughing even at Isaac's dry observations or the children's antics. The nightmares that had plagued her came less frequently, though she still started at unexpected sounds and kept a kitchen knife beneath her pillow. One unusually cool evening, as Olivia sat on her cabin porch mending one of James's shirts, Isaac approached with a bundle under his arm. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "Please do." She set aside her sewing as he settled into the chair, noticing how the fading light caught the silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples. "I brought something for the children," he said, unwrapping the bundle to reveal 3 books. "Found these in town today. Thought James might like the adventure stories, and this one has fairy tales for Emma. The picture book is for Thomas, of course. Olivia ran her fingers over the embossed covers. Isaac, this is too generous. Nonsense. Every child should have books. He smiled, a rare full smile that transformed his usually solemn face. My mother taught Will and me to read before we ever saw a schoolhouse. Said books could take us places our feet never could. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was. His expression softened with memory. She'd have liked you. Said a woman with backbone was worth 10 of the fainting type. Olivia laughed. I'm not sure I've ever been accused of having too much backbone. I disagree, Isaac said, his voice warm. Takes considerable backbone to do what you did, leave everything behind to protect your children. The simple understanding in his words touched her deeply. Some would call it cowardice, running away instead of staying to fix things. Isaac's expression hardened momentarily. Those people haven't seen what men like your husband can do. There's no fixing that kind of meanness, Olivia, just surviving it. They sat in companionable silence as twilight deepened around them. Crickets began their evening chorus, and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. I've been thinking, Isaac said finally. James is showing real aptitude with the horses. If you're agreeable, I'd like to start teaching him more seriously, not just riding, but care and training. Could be a good trade for a young man. Olivia considered this. James had flourished these past weeks, coming alive in ways she'd never seen in Salina. He'd like that very much, I think. And the town's got a small school. It's 3 miles, but not a bad ride. Emma's old enough to attend, and James too. I could take them in the mornings on my way to the mercantile. The offer stunned her. You've thought about this? Isaac nodded, looking slightly embarrassed. Children need schooling. My mother would haunt me if I didn't see to it. Your mother seems to guide many of your decisions, Olivia observed with a small smile. She was the best person I ever knew, he said simply. Lost her when I was 15, but not a day goes by I don't think what she'd advise. And what would she advise now? Olivia asked, curious. Isaac's gaze met hers, something unreadable in its depths. To be patient, to be kind. To remember that some hurts take longer to heal than others. The words hung between them, layered with meaning Olivia wasn't ready to examine too closely. She dropped her eyes to the books in her lap. The children will be thrilled with these. Thank you. He stood, understanding her need to retreat. Good night, Olivia. Sleep well. As he walked back toward the main house, his tall figure silhouetted against the last light of day, Olivia felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the summer air. It frightened her, this growing fondness, even as it drew her like a moth to flame. The first letter arrived in early September, delivered by the weekly mail rider who stopped at Circle K on his route between Clearwater and the next settlement west. Mrs. Chapman, the young rider called, holding out an envelope as Olivia hung sheets on the line. Her heart froze at the sight of the familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, she took the letter, nodding numbly as the rider tipped his hat and continued on his way. Inside the cabin, with the door firmly closed, Olivia stared at the unopened envelope. How had Frank found them? Had someone in Salina betrayed her? The postmark was Clearwater. Had he followed them here? When she finally gathered the courage to open it, Frank's words leapt from the page like physical blows. Olivia, did you think I wouldn't find you? Taking my children in the night like a thief. I know where you are. I'm coming for what's mine. You can run, but you belong to me. Always have, always will. Frank, the paper slipped from her numb fingers. Panic rose in her throat, choking her. They had to leave immediately before Frank arrived. But where would they go? How would they survive with almost no money? James found her sitting motionless at the table, the letter at her feet. "Mama, what's wrong?" Olivia forced a smile. "Nothing, darling, just a letter from an old friend." She tucked the paper into her pocket. "Where are your brother and sister?" "Emma's feeding the kittens and Thomas is napping." James studied her face. "Are you sure you're all right? You look pale." "Just tired, love." She stood, straightening her apron with hands that wouldn't quite stop shaking. "Why don't you go help Emma with those kittens while I start dinner?" Once alone, Olivia leaned against the wall, fighting the familiar terror. Frank's rage had always been terrifying, but his calm determination was worse. If he said he was coming, he would come. And Isaac, God, what would happen when Frank confronted Isaac? There would be violence, blood. Isaac might be killed trying to protect them, or Frank might harm the children in his anger. The thought of her children in danger steadied her. She'd faced this demon before, survived his worst. She would again, but not by running. This time she would fight. That evening, after the children were asleep, Olivia made her way to the main house. Isaac answered her knock immediately, surprise evident on his face. "Olivia, is something wrong? May I speak with you? It's important." He stood aside, gesturing her into the warm kitchen. "Of course." "Can I offer you some coffee or tea perhaps?" "No, thank you." She remained standing, unable to settle. "I received a letter today from my husband." Isaac's expression hardened. "He's found you." "Yes." She withdrew the crumpled letter from her pocket, handing it to him. "He says he's coming here." Isaac read it quickly, his jaw tightening. When he looked up, his eyes were dark with anger. "When did this arrive?" "This afternoon with the mail rider. And it was postmarked from Clearwater." At her nod, he continued. "So he's already nearby." "I should leave," Olivia said, voicing the thought that had haunted her all day. "Take the children and go before he arrives. I won't bring trouble to your door after all your kindness." "No." The word was firm, brooking no argument. "Running won't solve this, Olivia. He'll just follow again." "Then what do you suggest?" Her voice rose slightly. "Frank is dangerous when he's angry. He won't just go away because we ask nicely." "I'm not suggesting we ask nicely." Isaac set the letter on the table, his expression grim. "But I won't let you face him alone, and I won't see you and those children back in his power." Something in his tone gave Olivia pause. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we stand our ground." Isaac moved to the cabinet, withdrawing a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. He poured a small amount in each, offering one to her. "This isn't just about you anymore. James, Emma, and Thomas have found a home here. They're flourishing. You are too when you allow yourself." Olivia accepted the glass but didn't drink. "It's not that simple. Nothing worth fighting for ever is." Isaac took a sip of his whiskey, watching her over the rim of his glass. "You've been running for months, looking over your shoulder. Maybe it's time to stop running." "And do what?" "Frank won't listen to reason. He sees me and the children as possessions. Then we'll make him understand otherwise." Isaac set his glass down. "I've known men like your husband. They're cowards at heart, preying on those weaker than themselves. They back down when truly challenged." "You don't know Frank," Olivia whispered, fear clenching her heart. "He doesn't back down, he just gets more vicious." "Then I'll be ready for that too." Isaac's voice was quiet but determined. "I won't let him hurt you or the children, Olivia, I give you my word." The fierce protectiveness in his eyes made something shift inside her, a recognition of what had been growing between them these past months. More than gratitude or friendship, it was a deep understanding, a connection she'd never experienced with Frank even in their best days. "Why would you risk yourself for us? We're nothing to you, just employees, strangers you took in." Isaac's gaze softened. "Is that what you think? That you and those children mean nothing to me?" "I don't know what to think," she admitted. "You've been so kind, but always careful, distant. Because you needed safety more than anything else." He took a step toward her, slow and deliberate. Because I saw how afraid you were still are and I didn't want to add to that burden. And now I think you should know that you and your children have brought life back to this ranch and to me." Isaac's voice roughened with emotion. "I was just existing before you came, Olivia, going through the motions since Will died. Then you arrived with your fierce courage and those 3 wonderful children, and suddenly the house wasn't so empty. The days had purpose again." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes at his words. "Isaac, you don't need to say anything," he assured her quickly. "I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to understand why I won't let Frank Chapman take you away from here, why I'll fight for you and those children with everything I have." The simple honesty of his declaration undid her careful composure. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. "I'm so tired of being afraid," she whispered. Isaac crossed the distance between them, gently taking the untouched whiskey from her hand and setting it aside. "Then let me be brave for all of us, just for a while." When his arms opened, Olivia stepped into them without hesitation. The solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against her ear, felt like coming home after a long journey. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been held without fear, touched without pain following. "We'll face him together," Isaac murmured into her hair. "And when it's over, you'll be free to choose your own path. If that path leads away from Circle K, I'll understand. But if it doesn't—" He let the words hang, unfinished but full of promise. Olivia pulled back slightly to look up at him, finding no demand in his eyes, only patient hope. It would be so easy to lean up, to close the distance between their lips. Instead, she gently eased from his embrace. "I should get back to the children," she said softly. Isaac nodded, respecting her need for space. "Of course. But Olivia, promise me you won't try to leave, not without telling me." "I promise," she said, meaning it. Whatever happened when Frank arrived, she would face it here with Isaac beside her. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Just 3 days after the letter arrived, Olivia was hanging laundry when the thunder of hoofbeats drew her attention to the road. A cloud of dust heralded riders approaching, at least 3, moving fast. James, who had been helping her, looked up curiously. "Who's that, Mama?" "Go inside, James," Olivia said, her voice calm despite the dread coursing through her. "Take Emma and Thomas with you. Stay there until I come for you." "But Mama, now, James." She rarely used that tone, and her son responded instantly, hurrying to gather his siblings. Olivia moved to stand in front of the cabin door, watching as the riders drew closer. Her hands trembled slightly, but she clasped them tightly, refusing to show fear. Where was Isaac? He and Miguel had gone to check the western pasture that morning, while Hank was in town for supplies. As the riders came into full view, her worst fears were confirmed. Frank rode in the lead, his face set in lines of grim determination. 2 men she didn't recognize flanked him, hired guns, perhaps, or drinking companions pulled into his vendetta. They reined in before the cabin, dust settling around the horses' hooves. For a long moment, Frank just stared at her, his once handsome face hardened with anger and drink. "Hello, Olivia," he said finally, his voice deceptively soft. "Miss me?" "What do you want, Frank?" She kept her voice steady, though her heart pounded painfully. He laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "What's mine, my wife, my children?" He swung down from his horse, taking a step toward her. "You've led me on quite a chase, but it's over now. Get the children, we're going home. This is our home now." Olivia stood her ground, though every instinct screamed to flee. "The children are happy here, safe." Frank's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Safe with some stranger." "Did it take you long to find a replacement for me, Olivia? A week? A day? It's not like that, isn't it?" He advanced another step, close enough now that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "Always knew you were no better than you should be." Probably spread your legs for the first man who offered you shelter. The crude accusation stung, but Olivia refused to be baited. You need to leave, Frank. The children and I aren't going anywhere with you. His hand shot out, gripping her arm with bruising force. You don't tell me what to do, woman. Never have, never will. Now get the children before you what, exactly? Isaac's voice cut through the tension like a knife. He stood at the edge of the yard, rifle held casually but unmistakably ready. Miguel was a few paces behind him, similarly armed. Frank turned, keeping his grip on Olivia's arm. This doesn't concern you, mister. This is between me and my wife. That's where you're wrong. Isaac's gaze flicked to Olivia, concern evident in his eyes before returning to Frank. Anything that happens on my ranch concerns me, and Mrs. Chapman and her children are under my protection. Frank snorted. Protection? Is that what you call it? He yanked Olivia closer, making her stumble. She's my wife. The law's on my side. The law doesn't give you the right to beat a woman or terrorize children, Isaac countered, taking a deliberate step forward. Let her go. Now. Something in his tone made Frank hesitate. His grip on Olivia's arm loosened slightly, and she pulled free, stepping away from him. So that's how it is, Frank said, looking between them. You've been warming his bed all this time, haven't you? No, Olivia replied firmly. Mr. Kendrick has been a kind employer, nothing more. But he's right about one thing: we're not going back with you, Frank. Not ever. Frank's face contorted with rage. You think I'll just walk away, after tracking you for months, after the humiliation of my own wife stealing away in the night with my children? His hand dropped to the pistol at his hip. I'll see you dead first. The threat hung in the air for a heartbeat before Isaac's rifle came up smoothly. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Chapman. Frank's companions, who had remained mounted, exchanged uneasy glances. Frank, one called, this ain't worth dying over. There's other women. Shut up. Frank snarled, his hand still on his gun, his gaze locked with Isaac's, measuring. You willing to kill for her, if necessary, Isaac replied evenly. But I'd rather not have bloodshed on my land, so I'm giving you a choice. Leave now peacefully or face the consequences. For a terrifying moment, Olivia thought Frank would draw. His face twisted with thwarted rage, his fingers tightening on his weapon. Then, with a curse, he released the gun. This isn't over, he spat. You can't watch her every minute of every day. Actually, I can, Isaac said, his voice hardening. And I will. But more importantly, Sheriff Taylor in Clearwater is very interested in a man who matches your description. Seems you've made quite a reputation in Salina, assaulting the shopkeeper who helped your wife, threatening the stagecoach agent. The sheriff there sent a wire. You're wanted for questioning. Frank paled slightly. You're bluffing. Try me. Isaac stepped forward, rifle still trained on Frank. You can leave now, ride out of Kansas altogether, or you can push this and end up in jail, or worse. The impasse stretched, tension crackling in the air. Then one of Frank's companions broke. Come on, Frank, let's go, ain't worth hanging over. With a last venomous look at Olivia, Frank turned and mounted his horse. You'll regret this, he promised. Both of you. The only thing I regret, Olivia said clearly, is not leaving you years ago. With a savage jerk on his reins, Frank wheeled his horse and galloped away, his companions following quickly. Olivia watched them go, disbelief warring with relief. It couldn't be this easy, could it? Isaac came to stand beside her, rifle lowered but still in hand. Miguel will follow at a distance, make sure they leave the county. Will they? Just like that? I wasn't bluffing about the sheriff, Isaac said. I sent a wire to Salina after you showed me the letter. Frank Chapman has enemies there, people willing to testify against him. He's smart enough to know when to cut his losses. Olivia sagged suddenly, the tension of the confrontation draining out of her. Isaac caught her elbow, steadying her. "It's over," he said gently. "He won't come back. How can you be sure?" "Because men like Frank are cowards at heart. They only fight when they think they can win." Isaac's grip on her arm was warm, supportive. "He knows he can't win here." The cabin door creaked open and 3 small faces peered out anxiously. "Mama," James called. "Is Pa gone?" Olivia straightened, summoning a reassuring smile. "Yes, darling. He's gone, and he won't be coming back." Emma rushed out first, flinging herself at her mother's skirts. Thomas toddled after, arms raised to be picked up. James followed more slowly, his young face solemn as he looked from his mother to Isaac. "Did you make him go away?" The boy asked Isaac directly. Isaac knelt to meet James at eye level. "Your mother did that, son. She was very brave. I just helped a little." James considered this, then nodded. "Thank you for helping my mama." "You're welcome." Isaac ruffled the boy's hair gently. "How about we all go inside now? I think we could all use some of your mother's good tea after all that excitement." As they moved toward the cabin, Olivia hanging back slightly to walk beside Isaac, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. Frank might still pose a danger, but for the first time she truly believed they could be free of him. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for Isaac's ears alone. Not just for today, but for everything." His smile warmed her like sunshine after rain. "No thanks needed. Though I will take that cup of tea." Inside the cabin, with the children safely occupied with cookies and milk, Isaac and Olivia sat at the small table, cups of steaming tea before them. "I meant what I said," Isaac told her. "Miguel will make sure they leave the county. And I've already spoken to Sheriff Taylor in Clearwater. He'll keep an eye out in case Frank gets any foolish ideas about returning." Olivia nodded, wrapping her hands around her cup. "I still can't quite believe it, after all this time being afraid to have it end so quickly. Sometimes the things we fear most lose their power once confronted." Isaac studied her over his cup. "What will you do now? Now that you're truly free, will you stay in Clearwater, or perhaps move on to another town, start fresh?" The question caught her off guard. "I haven't thought that far ahead. For so long, my only goal was keeping the children safe from Frank. And now they are safe," Isaac said. "You all are." Olivia looked around the small cabin that had become home in these past months. Through the window, she could see the garden she'd tended, the chicken coop where Emma gathered eggs each morning, the corral where James was learning to ride. The thought of leaving filled her with unexpected sadness. "I'd like to stay," she said finally, meeting Isaac's gaze. "If that's still all right with you." The relief in his eyes told her more than words could. "More than all right," he replied softly. "Circle K wouldn't be the same without you and the children." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the children's chatter from the other room. Olivia found herself studying Isaac's face, the laugh lines at the corners of his eyes, the small scar along his jaw, the gentle curve of his mouth. When had this man become so dear to her? "Isaac," she began hesitantly, "last night you said something about when this was over I'd be free to choose my own path, I remember. What if the path I want to choose leads toward you?" The words came out in a rush, her cheeks warming at her own boldness. Isaac set his cup down carefully. "Then I'd be the happiest man in Kansas," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But Olivia, I don't want you to feel obligated or rushed. You've only just gained your freedom. I can wait, if waiting is what you need." The tenderness in his words brought tears to her eyes. Even now, with her heart laid bare, he was thinking of her needs before his own. "Frank and I married when I was 18, she said softly. "I thought I knew what love was then, the excitement, the passion. But it wasn't real, or it didn't last. What I feel for you, it's different, deeper. It's built on trust and kindness, on seeing the best in each other even on the hardest days. Isaac reached across the table, his hand covering hers. That sounds a lot like love to me. Yes, she agreed, turning her hand to twine her fingers with his. I think it is. The sound of running feet interrupted the moment as Emma burst into the kitchen, her face alight with excitement. Mama, Mr. Isaac. Honey caught a mouse, a real one, all by herself. Isaac laughed, rising from his chair. Did she now? That calls for a celebration. Let's go see this mighty hunter. As he followed Emma into the other room, his eyes met Olivia's over the child's head, filled with a promise that made her heart skip. Whatever path they chose from here, they would walk it together. The seasons turned, autumn painting the prairie in golds and russets before giving way to winter's stark beauty. Christmas came to Circle K with more joy than Olivia could remember in years. A small tree cut from the creek bottom and decorated with popcorn strings and paper stars. Gifts wrapped in brown paper. Carols sung around the piano Isaac had surprised them with in November. Frank Chapman became a distant shadow, a bad memory fading with time. Sheriff Taylor reported that he'd headed west, presumably to the Colorado territories, and there'd been no sign of him since that day in the yard. Occasionally, Olivia still woke from nightmares, but Isaac was always there to soothe her fears, his steady presence a balm to old wounds. Their courtship progressed slowly, respectfully, with long talks on the porch after the children were asleep, rides across the prairie on clear days, stolen kisses in the kitchen when no one was looking. Isaac proved to be a patient man, understanding Olivia's need to heal before she could fully give her heart. He won the children over completely teaching James to train his first colt, helping Emma build a proper house for her now grown cats, reading story after story to Thomas, until the boy fell asleep against his chest. They began calling him Pa sometime after the new year, and the first time James said it, Olivia saw tears in Isaac's eyes that he quickly blinked away. Spring arrived with a burst of wildflowers across the prairie and new calves in the pastures. On a perfect April morning, with the children as witnesses and Reverend Wilson officiating, Isaac and Olivia exchanged vows beneath an arch of early roses outside the main house. Her dress was simple ivory muslin. His suit was the one he wore to church each Sunday, but neither had eyes for anything but each other as they pledged their lives together. I never thought I'd find this again, Isaac said that night as they lay together in what was now their bedroom in the main house. The children slept peacefully down the hall, the cabin having been turned over to Miguel's new bride. After Will died, I thought I was meant to be alone. Olivia traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers, and I never thought I'd trust enough to love again. We were both wrong. Gloriously wrong, he agreed, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. You and those children saved me, Olivia Kendrick. And you saved us, she replied, the new name still a wonder on her lips. We saved each other. In the years that followed, Circle K flourished. The herd grew, the harvests were bountiful, and the family expanded with the birth of a son, William Isaac Kendrick, a year after their wedding. The baby had Olivia's auburn hair and Isaac's blue eyes, and his older siblings adored him fiercely. James grew into a fine young man with an exceptional gift for horses, eventually taking over more of the ranch operations as Isaac focused on expanding their cattle business. Emma developed her mother's skill with gardening and cooking, her gentle nature making her beloved throughout the county. Thomas proved to have a quick mind for figures and books, talking already of attending college back east someday. And Olivia, who had once known only fear and constraint in marriage, discovered the joy of true partnership. She and Isaac faced the challenges of ranch life together: drought years, cattle sickness, the usual trials of raising children with the same steady determination that had brought them through their first trials. On their 5th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Isaac slipped an arm around her shoulders. "Any regrets?" he asked, a question that had become something of a tradition between them. Olivia leaned into him, watching their children playing in the yard: James, now a lanky 16, Emma a graceful 12, Thomas a sturdy 8, and little Will toddling after them, all at 3. From the barn came the sound of Miguel singing to his horses as he finished the evening chores. The scent of apple pie cooling in the kitchen wafted through the open door behind them. "Not a single one," she answered truthfully. "This is everything I never dared to dream of." Isaac pressed a kiss to her temple. "For me too, love, for me too." As darkness settled over Circle K Ranch, stars emerging like scattered diamonds in the vast Kansas sky, Olivia Kendrick counted her blessings. From the darkest moments of her life had come this unexpected happiness: a loving husband, healthy children, a home filled with warmth and laughter. The road had not been easy, but every step, even the painful ones, had led her here, and she wouldn't change a single one.